part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action. This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright. You're listening to the Krypton Report.
Superman Day is coming, as well as our 10-year Man of Steel rewatch. Tune in on the 10th of June at 10 a.m. Eastern to watch live with us and talk about Man of Steel. That is also Superman Celebration Weekend, so if you can't, I understand. I hope you're at the celebration and having a good time.
Look up in the sky.
Get ready as Krypton Report prepares for Flash Week. That's right, from Friday to Friday in June, starting the 9th, we will be doing a special one episode per day focusing on the Flash. We will have 2 exclusive Patreon episodes that tie into Flash Week. You can sign up for our Patreon for $1. We will have special guests for each episode, so get ready for Flash Week. Welcome to the Krypton Report podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, the Superman of Blue, the Man of Tomorrow, and this episode is a very special episode. We have with us author and, need I say, Superman guru, Mr. Ed Gross. He has a new book coming out called Voices of Krypton, or Voices from Krypton, I apologize. And I can't wait to talk about it. It's amazing. Ed, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. And everybody gets Voices from Krypton wrong and calls it Voices of Krypton. I have no idea why.
I don't either.
Everybody does it.
I don't know why either. Like, I'm looking at it really saying that. I got the book right here. And
you can lift that book? It's so big.
My son was flipping through it earlier. He's like, Dad, this book looks cool. Of course, like, he's 8 and he's like, you know, there's not a lot of pictures and stuff. He's like, this looks cool. And I'm telling him about it and everything.
Live right now?
Nah, we're recording, but we're not live.
We're not live. Okay. I
thought
we were, by what I was seeing here, live show. Everyone can see you. It's like, oh, great.
Yeah, it's not live.
Okay.
It's just being recorded because I didn't want to do live because there's too many factors that happened. Last time we did a live show, you know, my kids came in and people just randomly showed up at my house. So it's always fun.
Me tell you, when I started as a journalist, I worked out of my house for 11 and a half years raising my kids, and my wife was out working. I was here with the kids. I cannot tell you, when I go now, when I'm writing a book or something and I listen to transfer an old cassette tape over to an MP3, I have them bursting in the room, fighting or crying or whatever. And I'm just saying to the person I'm speaking to, hey, the joys of working from home. At the time, not a lot of people were doing that. So it's pretty funny that how many interferences I had. So anyway.
And you still made an awesome career out of everything.
Well, I did my best.
But I'm excited to chat. Like, I have had the privilege of hearing you talk with other people, and I've had, the privilege of listening to your podcast before.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So getting a chance to sit down and talk is just one of those giddy moments of like 2 Superman fans talking. And I told my wife, like, I'm gonna try to keep it to about an hour. Okay. A little more that, because I'm like, we could be off on a tangent. Next thing you know, 4 hours passed. And
Tangent is my middle name, as anyone who I've interviewed can tell you.
I mean, that's
the directions. That's
happened before. I'm just talking to friends who are Superman fans, and you're just geeking out together. But I just, I'm glad we're here and we get this opportunity. Ed and I are video chatting, and I just want to point out he has an amazing life-size statue of Superman behind him, and I'm jealous.
There you go.
And I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
Well, you know what it is? We redid our house about 5-6 years ago, and my wife, who's not into this stuff at all, but always gives me Superman stuff for my birthday and Father's Day and Christmas, said, why don't we make a Superman room? And that's what we did. And this whole room is basically dedicated to Superman. So
there's some things that a wife can say that just, it gets you in the chest, and it shows that there's real love there. And
absolutely.
That's one of those things, things like, I bought you this Superman shirt. I got you this new figure. Things like that just are like, thank you.
And my boys chipping in for my 60th to get me that comic rack behind me.
I love that comic rack.
It's so cool. It's so exciting.
it's been something I've wanted to get for a while, to just prop up the comics in the corner instead of just having, long boxes and, short boxes. I got rid of all my long boxes.
There you go.
But yeah, so you wrote this book.
I did. I remember writing it. Yes.
And this book it's a beautiful testament to a character that we all love.
Well, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And the way that I described to my wife when I was sitting, I've been reading it. I've read some on the plane when I was flying. I got right before I left, so that was a great gift. I've been reading it here and there. I haven't finished it. For those, you can get lost in reading it, but it's 700 pages.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a book that I like to take my time as I'm working through it, because I want to digest everything.
Sure.
And the best way that I kind of described it to my wife when she was asking me about it, it's like reading a documentary almost, because you're going through it and you're hearing the author. I was like kind of the narrator and the guy, and you're guiding us through, and we're reading all these quotes and comments from, and just seeing the names inside this book it brings a smile to my face. Just one, like, oh my gosh, yes. And just, you feel like you are in the world and you are experiencing something genuinely unique. And I'm going to keep pitching this book every time I can on the podcast and everything, because I say this with my whole heart. I believe this is one of those books that every Superman fan should own.
Wow. Thank you. I do appreciate that. Seriously. That was, the beauty. First of all, you're saying it's like a documentary. That's the beauty of the oral history format, right? It's, I've written many of them with Mark Altman, as co-author on many of my other books. And he puts it best when he says it's like gathering 100 or 200 of your closest friends just to have a conversation about something. And that's how it flows from person to person and back and forth and just telling the story in a linear fashion, but in a way that is so unique to the oral history, because, you said I narrated, or I'm sort of guiding us. I step in where I have to, like, to bridge things, basically. Mm-hmm. But essentially, it's really them telling the story. I'm guiding it, but it's the words of the people who were interviewed who discuss this character and the history of the character in comics and in, I think, pretty much every adaptation that there's been. So it's pretty unique format, and I just love the experience of putting it all together.
Like I said, I'm reading it straight, but I did kind of jump around just to kind of see who's in there. And I will say this, one of the ones that popped out to me that I'm so glad that you included was Jason J. Lewis, who voiced Superman because I had the privilege years ago to interview him for the podcast. And I think this was back around 2017, maybe 2018. Mm-hmm. And I always said to him, like, I think you do an amazing job voicing the character. I just feel bad because you get forgotten. And that show kind of gets forgotten.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It had an impressive cast, an impressive run. It was very enjoyable. I love watching it. And, I have a picture collage right here that's like, it's just me. Every time I've met a Superman, I've kind of put it on this collage, and I'll print out a picture, just kind of have. And I have a picture of me and him, talking just like you and I are right now.
Right.
And I'm just like, I think he did an amazing job, and I wish he would have gotten more work voicing the character. So just to have him included was really, made me happy, because I'm like, he always gets forgotten as being part of the super fandom, You know
what's funny though? I interviewed him at Comic-Con at a round table first. And then I said to him, I grabbed him as he was leaving or whatever. I forget the exact circumstances. And I remember saying to Jason, I'm writing this oral history of Superman. I don't know when it's coming out, but I would love to just pick your brain about the character for a minute. And that's how I got him. And that's how he's in the book. So, there you go.
So you talk about writing this book. My question is kind of, when do you think you officially had the idea? Because I've heard you talk that you've had podcast interviews and you've had old interviews and stuff with people. When did you officially come to the idea that I'm going to write this book? When did this
microphone just died? Sorry.
That's okay.
Got excited. What can I tell you? I think it's, really I always knew I wanted to write a book about Superman. I've known that for probably, I would say, the last, 15, 20 years or so, I knew I wanted to, because I've been doing interviews on Superman since my journalism career started. I've always made a point of covering virtually every version that I could, past and present at the time. But I think when I started doing the oral histories, Mark Altman and I did 50-Year Mission, which is a 2-volume oral history devoted to the history of Star Trek, the first 50 years, obviously, 50-Year Mission. And once I fell in love with the format of the oral history with that, because I really wasn't familiar with it till we did that, I realized I have to do a book on Superman. I mean, the dream of doing, I've been very, very blessed in my career to write these books on things that I've always loved. Superman, Star Trek, James Bond, Star Wars, Planet of the Apes, Rocky. I've done books on all these subjects, but I never really had the opportunity to do Superman. And to have that, to me, I always say this was the crowning achievement for me personally, of these oral histories, was doing this in this format and to this length with as many people involved as there were. So really, I guess 2016 is when the seed really took root. And then, over the last few years, I've been accumulating. And to be honest with you, my agent wasn't able to sell the Superman book. She tried, she went to different publishers. People just didn't seem to be interested, which was blowing my mind. But I said to myself, I'm going to self-publish it. I'm doing this book one way or the other. And instead, I ended up at Nacelle Books, which was really great to be there, because they were so excited about it and have been so enthusiastic, carried that enthusiasm right up to now. So it's, that's when it really took root, though, 2016, I'd say.
That makes sense. You look back, that was a big year for Superman. Just you had BVS's release, you had Tyler being announced to come on to Supergirl.
Yeah.
And then that's really when Justice League Action was taking form. So you had this resurgence of the character. So it would make sense that it would be, more upfront for you. Now you're impressive, and I say impressive lightly.
Thanks.
Grouping of people that you interviewed. I have to ask, is there anyone that you wish you could have interviewed for this book that's alive?
Because I was going to say Christopher Reeve and George Reeves would be lovely to, and they're both in there, but that's through outside sources. Because I was
going to of course, Jerry and Joe. You'd be like,
yeah. And they're in there too, thanks to Tom Andre giving me permission to run his interviews with them. The book very clearly says where certain interviews came from in the Dramatis persona at the beginning.
It does. It's very nicely and I love just how you give a little blip about each person you're talking to, so that you remember, who this person is as you read through it. Is there anyone that's alive that you just couldn't get that you would have loved to have been able to interview for the book?
I got to be honest with you. I can't think. There are some actors and actresses and stuff you couldn't get that weren't available. You got turned down flat, but nothing that really affected the book, like not having them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nobody that I sat there and said, oh God, I didn't get so-and-so. I can't believe it. The only person that turned me down that I asked for interviews really was John Byrne. He turned me down, but he's in the book because other people who had interviewed him gave me permission to use their interviews with him. So that's how John's in the book. But outside of that, no. I really can't think of anybody major that I turned to and said, would you talk to me? And they said no. Most people were very enthusiastic talking about the subject. So I was very lucky. I really, you feel like you're on the right track when all those people say yes. And most of them, with the one exception who I won't say by name, never made me feel like I'm giving you time, but it's very limited. They stayed with me, chatted with me, sometimes for a few hours or a few sessions or whatever it took to get what I needed for the book. And I'm so grateful for that.
One thing I really love about just what I've read so far is that, you have it, you had it split up beautifully in how you move, things, but there's people that appear at this part of the book, like say the front, the intro, the Jerry and Joe, and then reappear later, like a lot of your comics writers and stuff. So it's not like you have this, here's an interview with this person, here's an interview with this person. It really is a beautiful flow of just information, of relevancy to where you are, like as you're moving through time.
Well, that was sort of the goal, was to make sure that it didn't read like, I mean, I say to people, and I do think it's true, in a way, the book is a bunch of mini books put together, because you've got substantial chapters on Smallville, Christopher Reeve, The Adventures of Superman. I mean, the Silver Age of comics, the Bronze Age of comics. I mean, each one of these things could almost be a small book in their own, and they're all combined here, kind of thing. But the important thing for me was to make sure that the voices from Krypton were spread throughout the book, as you're saying. It was important for me to say, if somebody did, like, get Mark Waid to talk about the radio show, you know what I mean? And
Perfect
have
example.
the different people say, get, I believe, Brandon Routh saying something about the Snyderverse. I mean, trying to get different people to refer, not only talk about their segment of the history, but to then talk about the overall history of Superman. And the other part of it, of course, was having all these historians, comic book historians, authors, different things like that, because they could comment on almost every single era of Superman, from the beginning to where we are now. So that was exciting for me, is to make sure that all of that was interwoven in such a way that you just didn't get a voice once, you heard it sprinkled throughout the book.
Let's take a moment and talk about Brandon, because I got to meet Brandon back in September. He's been on my list of Superman, like, people. Of course, I want to meet him because he's Superman, but like, I really wanted to meet him.
Yeah.
I told him, like, I didn't get a long chance to talk with him, but I got to say, like, Superman Returns came out at a very critical point in my life and really helped shape me and change me, and like, just, it was what I needed at the time. And he asked me why, and I gave him a little bit, and I could genuinely tell, like, like, I've met people and talked to them, when you make a comment or make something that genuinely sparks their interest. And I would have loved to got to talk to him a little bit more about it. But he wrote your foreword.
Yeah.
And I love the foreword.
Didn't he do a great job, sir?
I read it in the car. So like, my wife and I, we went to the post office. I checked the mail, and I was so happy my book had arrived. And my kid's like, "What is that, Daddy?" And I'm like, I'm telling them what this is. And she's driving, and I'm reading it, and I'm reading this, and I'm like, I'm almost in tears. And I'm like, you have to read this forward. I'm not going to tell you who wrote it. I just want you to read it about the conversation, because my wife and I will get into really good conversations about the character, because I've been sharing with her about the book, and we were talking as I was prepping, to chat with you. And I told her that I feel like everyone who's played Superman has some sort of part where they off the screen and on the screen, they have elements of the character.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, there's something genuine about Brandon that just feels so true to the character that it's I don't even know how to say it. Like, it feels like he is more Superman on and off than some of the other people. But
I think you're right. He hits me as somebody who was genuinely, first of all, was a fan before he played Superman. He was a fan of the character, but he's somebody who embraced not only playing him, but sort of being him, of embodying Superman, and having Superman, in a sense, embody him, if that makes sense, in that he walked away so touched and changed by the experience of playing Superman, that movie is what, how many years ago now? 15, 16 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Something like that, or maybe a little more. I think about 15 years ago. But he carries it as if he just played it, even though he did do the Crisis on Infinite Earths thing, which, again, he was so touched by the opportunity to play Superman at that stage, that you read it in his forward, you read it and hear it in his comments. He loves the character, but most importantly, what he represents.
Mm-hmm.
In all the people I've interviewed, like actors who have played Superman, or read interviews with them, or watched them, or whatever it may be, there are very few. I'm not saying they don't take the work seriously, but they don't sort of look at the character. I haven't gotten the vibe that they have anyway, and are changed by having played him. Tom Welling did a great job as Clark Kent. I don't think he came away changed by playing Clark Kent. I don't think Dean Cain came away changed from playing Clark Kent. But I do believe that Brandon was. I believe Christopher Reeve was, of course, to some degree at least, because he was so determined to do other things besides Superman. I understood that.
Mm-hmm.
And Henry, to some degree, I to a large degree, I think, projects that real love for what Superman represents. But Brandon does see him at still to even a fictional character as the opportunity to be the light to lead the way, as he says. And I'm just so I've interviewed Brandon probably a total of maybe 7 times over the years. Met him at Superman Celebration, met him at New York Comic Con, I think it was, or WonderCon or something, and interviewed him there. And every time I step away saying that he believes man can fly. He believes what Superman represents. And he has, I think, taken a lot of that and into his own life, into his own thinking about things. And it's just so impressive. I know I've gone on a bit here, but that's just, you brought him up.
Yeah. I mean, that's, like I said, that's the vibe. Like there's a different vibe when talking with Superman and meeting Brandon than when I've met others. So, I mean, it's a great point.
And I love the fact that he was the absolute last interview I got for the book. So that was kind of neat. He writes the forward and he's the last interview. I mean, that's pretty cool.
It works. Now, one thing I've heard you talk about that I love, and I told this to my wife, was when people ask you who your favorite Superman is. And I'm just going to let you answer that because I think you bring it out beautifully in how you describe your love for the character.
Well, I mean, I'm going to always say Christopher Reeve first. I mean, I've said it all along. If I was going to say which actor do I think of when I think of Superman, I think of Christopher Reeve. There's no doubt. But that being said, to me, and this is what I've said in other interviews, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself.
No, that's what I want you to do because it's
okay, good. Then I will.
Beautifully articulated.
I call myself a generational fan. I don't know if that's the apt phrase or not, but I'm going to go with it because I discovered Superman when I was 5 years old with reruns of The Adventures of Superman, and that was in 1965. From that moment, and then I fell in love with the comic books and the character in the comics and how he evolved over the years. But I went from George Reeves to Filmation's New Adventures of Superman. I hated Super Friends. Sorry, always have. Just too dumb. Even at 13, I was like, "What? What is this?" But I'm sorry for the fans of Super Friends. But then you get on to Christopher Reeve and Gerard Christopher and John Haymes Newton, not in that order. Dean Cain, Tim Daly voicing him, Tom Welling, Brandon, Henry, Tyler. I don't care if that S is being worn, or even if it wasn't in the case of Smallville for a long time. I'm there. I go where the character goes. It's like there's all this online turmoil about the fact that Henry Cavill was, quote unquote, dumped, and they're going to start again with Superman Legacy. I'm the kind of guy, a fan of Superman, not necessarily a particular actor, who says, Henry was lucky. He got 3 movies to do, 3.5 if you count the 2 versions of Justice League, and a cameo. That's not bad. I mean, that's really not bad. But it's like, oh, he's not doing it anymore. We're getting Superman Legacy with a new actor. Okie dokie.
Yeah.
Try to incorporate the John Williams theme, please. But outside of that, okie dokie. So I just go where the S goes. It's kind of like for me and James Bond, or even Planet of the Apes, these things that I love, truly love. I want to see them continue. I could sit here and go, well, if Henry's not playing them, I'm not going to watch Superman anymore. But I could have said the same thing. Oh, Sean Connery's not playing James Bond. I'm not going to watch James Bond anymore. And I would have missed all those movies afterwards. Or the people who get crazy about the Kelvin timeline in Star Trek, right? The J.J. Abrams movies.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I like them. I think the cast is fantastic. I have problems with some of the plotting and stuff. But the cast has nailed it. I'm going with those, not every version of Star Trek, but where Kirk, Spock, and McCoy go, generally speaking, I go. And that's how I feel about Superman. It's like I've been a fan for all these years, and I don't see myself stopping. Super Pets came out. They had a clip of Superman in it. I was there. I mean,
Super Pets
anyway, but they had the John Williams theme and Superman interacting with Krypto. It was like, of course I'm going to go see it. And I did. So yeah, it's just, I just love the character, and I like to feel that I've evolved as he's evolved in his own, you know what I mean? As our lives have gone on, and I just want to find out where he is. And I could not sit at home knowing that there's a version of Superman playing in theaters or on television and not watch it. That's crazy. just could not imagine that happening. So
See, I love your explanation because I feel like that's how a lot of fans should approach things because I don't have any control over who plays or what happens.
neither
I'm
one
just
of us do. Yeah.
I'm happy my character is being represented. I'm happy that the character is alive and is somewhere, so that's kind of, the same feeling that I have towards is like, okay, you might have wanted more of this one version or actor, but time moves on. I wonder because how like you said you first introduced here with George,
Yeah.
and then you always think of Chris, like, and I think back like my childhood's kind of this blended because technically I was a kid when Dean Cain was Superman and I
Right.
watched Lois and Clark, but we had the Chris films. I had a VHS tape of. I now know that it was 1 and 2 together, but in my brain, I always just thought it was one movie until I got older. It was taped from TV, so like I even still remember like commercial things. But, and I look at my kids like, which Superman are they going to latch on to, or are they just going to be like this, a fan of the character because there's not been like one for them. My kids were born in 2015 and 2017.
Okay.
So. They've been around when I've watched Smallville. They saw, Man of Steel. They've watched those films with me. They've watched Superman and Lois with me.
Mm-hmm.
So is there going to be a version that they like, that's my Superman, or are they just going to kind of go where the character goes?
Well, I mean, my sons I have 3 sons and they're between like 28 and 32. Okay. Or 35 actually. He's older. Sorry, Ted. But all of them, my brain is Swiss cheese. I'm only organized with oral histories. That's it. But with Superman, it's like, I know that my youngest likes the character in general and he loves Superman and Lois, but he really loves Henry Cavill as Superman. And he can't watch the Christopher Reeve movies because the effects in his mind are just so primitive that it's just hokey. It's just he can't get into it, which I can't believe he's genetically related to me for that. But all 3 of them do tend to like Superman in general, though I'd say my youngest is the most sort of dedicated to one actor, and it's Henry Cavill.
You said about the effects is funny. My daughter, she just turned 6. She loves the Flash.
Okay.
We gave her a birthday was all Flash stuff, and
Cool.
she'll watch. So I've been rewatching Flash stuff and everything. She really likes the movie version right now. She'll watch some Grant Gustin stuff with me too.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching the pilot for a future podcast with John Wesley Shipp, and she started watching, and she couldn't get into it. She's like, nah, And even my son was like watching the effects. He's 8, and he's kind of like,
at 8,
okay. He's like, cool. He's
okay.
all right.
He liked it. Okay, good.
He was watching part of it with me, and like I think he's a very technical minded. So I think when he like watches stuff, he'll ask me how they did it or like effects wise.
That's cool. Yeah.
And start to like ask me questions. So we talk about that. So I think he had an appreciation in a sense of like, okay, I see what they're doing,
Right.
But you mentioned James Bond, and this is a debate, and this is a question that I ask anyone I interview.
Okay.
Do you think that the Superman theme should be like the James Bond theme?
Yes.
The Williams theme. Yes. Yeah. I mean,
how quick could I answer that question? Absolutely. I was just having this conversation with somebody because not only when I'm interviewed, I do talk about Superman outside of that. And I do feel like that's why I made the crack before about James Gunn. Please use the John Williams theme. Hans Zimmer did a great job with the Man of Steel theme. I'm not saying he didn't. However, the Superman theme from John Williams is exactly like the James Bond theme or the Indiana Jones theme. Same guy. Amazing. It captures instantly the character. What I love, and I may have said this recently, so again, apologies if I'm repeating what I've said on other podcasts. I love watching like tributes to Superman to the John Williams theme that are intercutting everything from Christopher Reeve to the Filmation Filmation cartoons, the Fleischer cartoons, Kirk Allen, whatever it may be. It's the John Williams theme unifying 85 years of Superman, basically. I'm telling you, I'm sorry, the Hans Zimmer theme would not do that. If you played the Hans Zimmer theme with clips from every single version of Superman that's ever been filmed, I'm telling you, it would not have the same impact as the John Williams theme. I mean, I remember when Supergirl was coming out and they released a clip of Superman and Supergirl saving that jet that was coming down, right? And somebody put it to the John Williams theme. It blew me away. It played so beautifully with Tyler, the jet's getting away from him. He looks and he shoots forward. And as he goes, you hear dun, 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 as he shoots forward. I got hair standing up on my neck now. It's just the iconic theme for Superman, and there's no reason in the world to change it. I don't care if the approach of the movie has changed. Like when Superman Returns didn't do as well at the box office as they wanted, Warner's insisted that anything associated with the Donner films be discarded. That which is why we never really got until they played with a little bit in the Joss Whedon theme, in the movie version of Justice League first, inappropriate places, frankly, but they did incorporate it. It just, now I hope that as they're going to change again, they'll recognize that it is, as you said, like the James Bond theme, and it should represent really every version of Superman in the movies, at least. It should be the theme. You can play with it. You can update it and certainly lead it into a new theme. But I think the core, it's kind of like Star Trek beginning with the dun, 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 you know what I mean? And then lead into any theme you want. I think that's so, I guess,
I agree.
Not a long-winded answer, but
no, I love, because like, I even think like, I love the Williams theme, yes. But I really liked how with Superman Returns, how they started. It starts differently. It doesn't start with the dun dun. It was dun dun dun.
Right.
Dun, 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 dun. Like that's where it starts. And there's some differences in the music, in the orchestration stuff from what John Ottman did in Superman Returns compared to John Williams. And that proves that you can, like you just stated, like maybe drop it an octave, maybe, mess with, some of the instrumentation, and, it's music. It can be moved, but the core theme can still be there.
Absolutely.
And you can, carry it character to character. And I think that it just automatically brings an emotion and a sense, because even looking at, and I cannot remember who did the music, and I apologize, for Superman, Lois and Clark, that theme is very similar to the John Williams.
Oh yeah. I can't.
Shirley Walker, when she did Superman the Animated Series, is very dun 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 dun. Like it has a very similar feel, which proves that the style and I'm not well versed enough in my music language for orchestra.
Neither am I.
to properly state what I'm trying to say, but I think that there's always precedence that theme can carry. You can tweak it, and it can be just that musical symbol for the character.
Yeah, and some people would think I'm crazy for saying this probably, but I actually think that Williams incorporates a bit of Adventures of Superman in the Superman theme. I believe there are certain elements. If you think about dun 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 dun, yeah, please, for my out of tune music.
It's okay. They listen to me talk all the
time. But I do think that he incorporated some of that as well. And I love Donner's constant statement he was making during the years that the song says Superman.
Yes,
it's just
it does.
It's
and
great.
That's,
yeah, I hope that they keep it. I really do. It's James Gunn. I'm hoping with Superman Legacy that he'll see that. It's kind of like, I remember, I tried tweeting him once because he does respond to some tweets, just when he said that Superman Lois may have like one more year left or something, because people like it. And I wrote, not only do people like it, but they get it. Please keep this show going. So not that James Gunn's going to read my tweet, but there you go. So
you never know. Anyway. My working theory and hope for Superman Lois has been 5 seasons, basically in the show right as it's time to pass the Superman torch to Superman Legacy. Yeah. So you have this nice transition, but it's all the stuff we're still holding our breath as of this recording, waiting to find out if
The CW's getting
Superman,
renewed,
yeah, and Lois has been renewed. And my thought is, it's this great show, and it's a perfect Superman for this time because, part of my story, and I've shared this, is when Smallville came out, I was in high school, and that was like the character saying, "Hey, I'm with you." The year that Smallville ended, when Clark and Lois were trying to get married, was the year that I got married. So I had Smallville through my teens into college, up till that show ending when I was married. Then Superman and Lois comes on, and Superman is now married, father of 2. I'm married. I'm a father of 2. Yes, I have little kids, but they're, his are teenagers. But this idea that this character comes to me at times where I am in my life.
Sure.
And it's kind of an inspiration. Like I remember John Kent, I call him John, little John, Superman's son, was born technically in Convergence in 2015.
Right.
Solomon, my son, was born in 2015.
There you go.
So I'm reading the comic of Superman becoming a father, this character that I've carried with me since I was a kid, that's always kind of been there as I'm becoming a father. And then that whole rebirth era of, John being this 8-year-old boy and then a 12, and, my son's now 8 and everything. But it's just kind of the character comes to me in a time when I need it. So having this representation of Superman in a part where so many fans are, this is our first time seeing Superman as a dad,
right?
So having this character for us who are, have children and everything, it's a big deal. Like we are like, hey, it's almost a full circle. Like, I said, like what I love about Superman and Lois is it's not a sequel to Smallville or Lois and Clark, but it's like almost like a spiritual continuation of these themes. So
Absolutely.
It's like we need this show, and like this season's been amazing.
Yeah, they've done a great job. They really have. And who's a character like that for me in a sense? It's not the whole family thing, but I remember the weirdness. I saw Rocky when I was 16 years old, right, in 76. And I took away the message of you have to go for it in life. You have to try to live your dream. You may fail, but the point is trying rather than saying, that'll never happen. I won't do it, right? Flash forward to Rocky Balboa. It's now 2006. Ed has gone from 16 to 46. And here's a guy saying it's not how hard you can get, how hard you can hit. It's how hard you can get hit and keep on going. It is how you have a chance to do it again, to try to achieve, even at this age, to try to do that. That to me was a beautiful bookend from 16 to 46 to shocking that Sylvester Stallone was still playing a boxer all those years later. But it was, and it's that, I mean, Rocky's another character I love. It's no Superman, but he's another character I love. And that was part of that sort of that inspiration I took away.
I love Rocky Balboa. As a kid, my favorite movie was Rocky 3. My mom said I would sit and watch that as like a little kid.
It's awesome. I'm sorry, it just is.
It is. But Rocky Balboa, I think Rocky 5 is rough.
What Rocky 5's got? Rocky 5's got where Paulie gets knocked down in the bar by Tommy Gunn, and Rocky picks Paulie up and he goes, "You did pretty good knocking him down. Why don't you try knocking me down?" It's like, I love it. So, as bad as that movie is, it gave me my moments. So anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. But it's like you have to have Rocky 3 to get to Rocky Balboa.
Yeah.
And I love Rocky Balboa.
Yeah.
I think that's such a strong film, and I don't feel like it gets as much love in the Rocky series as it should, but it definitely does.
It was more of a nuanced portrayal, and I think Stallone carried that over to the first 2 Creed movies as well.
Yeah.
A more mature acting performance from Rocky Balboa to Creed and Creed 2. So anyway, people are like, "Will you shut up about Rocky?" Go ahead.
Nah, if they listen to our friend Anthony Desiato, they know that he brings up Rocky all the time.
All right, good.
One question I always ask, and is when you think of Superman, do you prefer trunks or no trunks?
Someone else asked me that, and it feels like such a cop-out, but I just want to see Superman. I mean, do I have a preference? I like the trunks. I mean, I'm used to the trunks, but I'm also gotten used to him not having trunks. But certainly if Superman Legacy had him in the trunks, I would be very happy to see them again. It really depends on their thing.
My answer is a cop out as well, because I'm like, you know what? In live action, I kind of prefer no Trunks, but they did a great job with the Brandon Routh suit in the quote unquote Kingdom Come suit. Yeah. And I think this season's suit with Tyler looks really good without Trunks.
Yeah.
But if you need Trunks, put them in the comics. I'm okay with that. I think it also just kind of depends on, style and stuff like that. But
for me, it's all about the yes, man. You can wear Trunks, don't wear Trunks, just be Superman.
So. It's just one of those things that so many fans get fight over. And I'm just like,
I don't see. That's where I don't have patience, because it just doesn't make sense to me to waste time fighting about that sort of thing. It's like, you have an opinion about it, of course, but people get so vehement about it that it's kind of like, who cares? I mean, is there nothing else going in life that this is the debate that you have to have? I mean, I said,
that's how it is.
Either way.
There's nothing going on in life. That's the debate.
I guess that's the problem.
The other thing is like, okay, we've talked a little bit with Superman Legacy, and I sent out a tweet the other day, and I said, you know what? What I'm excited about with Superman Legacy again is merchandise. Just the feeling of the resurgence of Superman when Superman Returns came out, when Man of Steel.
Oh, sure.
When I could walk into the store and I could buy my kid a Superman shirt without having to order it online. I could just go to Target, to Walmart, and just get one off the rack, or whatever Superman stuff. Like, I know you can't see like everything, but like my whole room I'm in is filled with stuff. Like,
yeah, I've got a lot of stuff in here too. So I get
like I got curtains, I got my Smallville jackets hanging up over here and stuff. Right. It's like stuff that I've had to like search for, but I'm really excited to just be able to walk into the store and grab something Superman again easily.
I'm excited to have people get that Superman stuff for me and give it to me as gifts because that's what everybody does. I told you, they all give me gifts with the S on it. So it's, I'm the easiest person to buy for. And if there's new merchandise, that means my Superman room will become even more crowded with stuff. So I'm all for it.
Yep. That's the same here. It's like, what do we get Tyler? Something with Superman. Does he have this already? No.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. That is the eternal question. People always asking.
Last year for Father's Day, my son and my wife went out to the comic book store, and she told me when they came back, he said, "Get this one, Mommy." And she's like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah, Daddy doesn't have this one." And I didn't. It was the hardbound Jeff Johns Brainiac Attacks.
I love that story. Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
And there's a great scene with Pa and Superman in it. And my son he knew Daddy doesn't have that one. Get it for me.
Very cool.
So going back to the book, and our whole conversation is just an expression of the book in its spirit in itself, the oral history of, this is more, base, but this is like our whole history of our fandom of just where we pull from the character.
Yeah.
Was there anything in all your research and everything you're putting this book together that you discovered that you didn't know about the character that really surprised you?
The thing that sticks out in my mind, and it's not really something about the character per se, but about the history. I really, really, for the first time, looked at the whole Siegel-Schuster versus DC Warner Brothers situation. That to me was enlightening to see just how much stuff went on and how when you're doing I kept referring to people, and for the first 4 months of this writing of this book, I was in this rabbit hole of Siegel and Schuster because I was trying to determine or get a sense of who's the hero here, who's the villain here, really, and all that. And I realized there are no heroes, there are no villains. It is just a situation from two perspectives, but dragged on for years. I mean, poor Jerry Siegel became so embittered, and I understand why.
Yeah.
Feeling that, they got ripped off and stuff. And then you argue and say, yeah, but they shouldn't have sued. When they sued in 1946, they lost everything.
Yeah.
They should have negotiated, really, then, I think. But and then you hear this company's side, and see, this is where people are going to really probably get annoyed at me about this, and even in the book. But I did try. I tried so hard to present both sides of that story, and so on the one hand, I say yes, they sold the rights for a very low amount of money, the $130 for it. but they did stay employed for 10 years writing and getting a cut of things. And the number that I think I did the equivalent of $6.7 million in 10 years, if you adjust for inflation of what they made. That's pretty good. I mean, considering. But their story is no different than what Sylvester Stallone's going through right now with Rocky.
Mm-hmm.
He's very public about the fact he doesn't own the character, and that the producers do, Charlotte and Winkler's estate or them or their estate do. But that's the deal you sign. And it's the reason the Gilligan's Island actors got paid for 5 reruns, and that was it, even though Gilligan's Island ran for decades, millions of times around the world, and they didn't make a dime off of it. It's so you sign these work for hire agreements, or you sign these deals not knowing any better, and then the situation changes and you're screwed. Because now, at the same time, should DC or Warner Brothers done something sooner? Yes.
Yeah.
They had a moral obligation, no matter what well, you sued me, so screw you. I'm taking your name off the comic. And then when Jerry Siegel came back in 59, and because Joanne Siegel pressured Jack Leibowitz to do something, they wouldn't put his name on the book, and they treated him like crap. I mean, they made his life a hell there again. And when he had the opportunity to sue again, he did, even though, again, he shouldn't have. And he was taken off it again. It's just, so that's my sort of like realizing, and how much the Siegel-Schuster story dipped in and out of the history of Superman. Like they were there till 46, they left. They came back, Jerry came back in 59, they sued again, they were out. The Neil Adams thing happened at the time of Superman, the movie, and suddenly everything changed because of the fact they were making this big budget movie and they didn't need the negative publicity. And I think Neil Adams. Sorry, Neil Simon's a nice man too. I've met him. He's gone now. But Neil Adams put it perfectly when he supposedly said to DC, for the cost of hiring 2 secretaries, you can make this right. What you spend on 2 secretaries a year, you can make this right by giving them money and insurance, and there you go. And they did. And guess what? Everything changed, and Superman the movie had created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, and it was lovely and thrilling to see. And their story had sort of a happy ending after decades of the thing. I don't even know if I'm answering your question anymore.
No, you are.
It's the tangent thing.
No, because you want to root. I think we are always ingrained to root for the underdog, and it's very easy to see Jerry and Joe as the underdog taken by the corporate evils, But in reality, like you said, you sign a contract, you agree to something, and it's the business side.
Just the way it is.
Yeah, it's the business, and it's the business side of how things go, and you couldn't have predicted what this would do. Like the change, and
Mark Waid said to me that this thing could have gone the same way that their Spy Smasher and other things they did failed to click with the audience, failed to live on. Superman could have come and gone, and nobody could have noticed, and it would have been over right away.
Mm-hmm.
It just happened to be that it clicked. It happened to catch people's attention because it was so different, but nobody knew that going in. It's like when they say to people, did you ever suspect that you would have the kind of phenomenal success you had? No, nobody ever knows what's going to click with people. Mm-hmm. And that's a question that people ask, like stars and things all the time. It's like, did you suspect that, Indiana Jones would be this giant, phenomenal thing, or Dr. No would launch a movie, a movie series that's still going around 60 years later and 25 movies later? No, they were making a movie. They didn't know. They were making a comic. They were making whatever. And just luck, the stars line up and things happen. So, and I'm certainly not sitting here saying that, Warner and DC, I keep saying Warner and DC, but I mean, for those years, national periodical.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're the heroes in the story. They're good guys. Like we have to root for them. I don't root for them. I mean, they had all the money and they had all the toys. So I don't root for them per se, but I also don't vilify them. I don't sit there and beyond saying morally, you should have done something. So in writing the book, that was my rabbit hole in the beginning and kept resurfacing. I think we dip into that story like 3 times. Dip into that story 3 times throughout the book that we leave Jerry and Joe, and then come back to Jerry and Joe, then leave Jerry and Joe, then come back one more time, and then move forward from there. So that to me was like the eye-opening thing. The rest of it is like I had a pretty good working history of Superman. I had pretty good knowledge of what went on with the character in his comics and in his in the various film and TV shows. So, yeah.
Are you currently reading the Superman comics now? Any of them, or?
I am trying to find the time. I mean, it's like when people say, "What books have you read?" I don't read any. I don't even read my books. I should. I should read them when I'm done writing them. The thing I did read, however, is I decided to read the first 3 issues so far of the John Kent story with Ultraman and Injustice, Superman and stuff. Yeah. And I have to say, I'm loving it. And I did read recently Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, because they're making a movie out of it. So I figured, let me see what this is. And I really enjoyed it. And I really want to get into the whole War World thing. And I'm going to try to become much more involved in reading the current storylines, because they have good writers working on them now. And that's, I think that's great.
I too recently read I bought, of course I have the app, and when I have downtime, it's one of those things I'll do is pull up, and read a comic on there. And I read The Woman of Tomorrow. Thought it was great. I love Tom Taylor's writing. So I think you'll really enjoy more of like the John Kent. If you go back and read his John Kent run leading up to.
Yep. I got them on my Kindle. I'm just ready to get to them when I can.
And I think just talking with you, you'll really appreciate the World War saga.
Yeah.
Of just how it really dives into Clark, Clark Superman, the person, the character, the moral standing of a character that he is. I think you'll really, really love that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
With the book being as big as it is there stuff that you had to leave out?
Not stuff necessarily I had to leave out, because one of the other things I constantly say is there are going to be a lot of people out there saying he didn't cover this and he didn't cover that, and there are things I left out, more minutia. I think I certainly hit all the highlights, and when I say that, I don't mean in a cursory way. I dive into them, I think, pretty much throughout the comic history and the movie history and TV history of it all. My biggest problem is, I make a joke, but I'm not lying. I could still be writing this book now. I could. I mean, the thing is 330,000 words, and the publisher was like, you have to stop. you have to stop. There are always more people to interview. There are always more things to add to the book. And I had to stop. So I bring it right up to James Gunn and Superman Legacy. I mean, I bring it as far as that's concerned. And, I said to them, if this book's successful, do you think we'll do a revised version? Another version is what I said. And they go, it's already like almost 800 pages. We can't do a book bigger than that. I said, no. I'm talking about volume 2. Because I'm like all ready to look at the history of Supergirl and Lois Lane and Lex Luthor in one book in much more depth than I was able to do those things.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Huh?
That would be an awesome book. There.
I think that it's ripe for another book. If this one sells, everyone buy a copy of the book, please.
Yes.
If this one sells,
I'll take 2.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, good. I'd love to have another volume out for 2025, but that's not going to happen unless this sells, and we'll see. And even if it doesn't happen, you know what? I don't have to write another word about Superman, right?
You're like, but I will. But I
will, but I don't have to. In other words, I've said my piece. That's how I felt after I finished Star Trek. I haven't really covered the new Star Trek that much. Whatever my feelings are about certain shows, it's not that. It's just not the same as it used to be in terms of talking, getting people and talking to them, having access to them. And the shows themselves don't throw me. But after we finished 50-Year Mission, I actually took a few years off from Star Trek and had to sort of work my way back into it. People said to me when I finished this book, you probably never want to hear the word Superman again, right? I was like, no, I've handed the book in. The first thing I did was blast the John Williams theme on my TV. So I'm still there. I'm not going anywhere as far as that's concerned. I'm ready for whatever comes. So
I hear you.
It does not go away. Not this character in the subject.
I'm trying to think of the right quote, and I might be paraphrasing. It's like, no good movie is too long and no bad movie is too short. And that's kind of how I feel about with your book. It's long, but it's amazing. Like it's what
We so appreciate that. I
me as a
really do.
fan, I'm lost in it. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I was, like I said, I'm reading through it and I'm taking my time. So I'm really, you know, grabbing everything. And then I was like flipping through it, reading little things here and here just to kind of get as much of the experience. And I'm just like, I could get lost in this and just be there and just reflect on the character and putting myself in the conversation of when this took place. Like, what did I feel like, you know,
Right.
as you get into the latter parts where, you know, I'm alive and it's
Yeah.
like Dean King is Superman. And it's like, yeah, I'm there with you. And, I feel like that is like with the book, you know, it's already long, but a volume 2, yeah, you know, it's like I just recently watched all the Lord of the Rings films again with my kids, and we did the extended editions,
Right.
and they loved it. Like, they immersed themselves in the
awesome.
world. We did it like an hour a day, you know, we
Mhm.
broke it up and stuff, and I didn't get tired because I'm immersed in the world.
Absolutely.
But then, like, you know, you watch something that's like, this is an hour and 20 minutes, you're like, is this over? Can this please be over?
Yeah.
And I just say that in comparison to your book, like, yeah, another book, it'd be awesome.
I'd love the chance to do it because I'm not tired of writing about them. So yeah.
I do want you to give a chance. Where can people get the book? How can they find it? I want to make sure that we have all the details to, you know, share with everybody. And a little secret here, I'm making this special video for Superman Day. It's going to have my own personal commercial for your book in it.
Oh, cool. I actually have a trailer for it if you want me to send it to you.
Oh, please. If you do,
Yeah.
I'll just throw that into the
Yeah.
to the special episode.
Yeah, but the book is being published June 6th, and I'm excited that I'm going to be at Superman Celebration that weekend to do a presentation on the book. So I'm really, really excited about that. It's like I've gone to Superman Celebration twice in 2018 and last year. And last year was basically to do any interviews I could there to kind of add to the book. That was the idea. This year, it's to actually stand up there on stage and promote it, which I'm very, very excited to do, just to be among Superman fans and talking about the book. It's available for pre-order, and pre-order, like I said, it's June 6th, and it's good discount price at Amazon. Of course, you can get Amazon. I'm sure any bookseller you can order it from. It's certainly not going to have a limited availability. It's available wherever you get books, wherever finer books are sold. Yeah, people can find it at any of those places, and it's available now for order. So
awesome. Yeah, I know my my co-host and my friend who periodically is on here. They're both interested in it when I was telling them about the book, and then, you know, I was going to talk with you today, so they both are excited to hear it, and they tried to look at the book while they were here, and I let them look. I was like, "Here you go.
You can look.
This is mine. This is mine.
It's mine. It's mine. It's like Daffy Duck, right? It's mine. It's mine. It's all mine."
So I'm really glad we got to chat. Like I told you when we started, we'll keep it to about an hour. Respect your time.
No
and
worries.
Everything.
I will say, I want to say one thing though.
Sure.
Mark Waid wrote the afterword for the book, and one of the things he wrote is that this is the definitive book about Superman. And I think and that's very lovely, and I was so appreciative of it. You know, the afterword and the comment. So after Mark got the book and he'd had it for a couple of weeks, I wrote him and I said, "All right, did I get it right?" That's my big question. I have known Mark for a number of years, so I can just come right out and he'll be honest with me. I said, "Did I get it right?" He goes, "Sir, not only did you get it right, but I stand by my words when I said it was the definitive book about Superman." Dude, what more do I need?
I mean, Mark
wonderful.
is great. Mark was the first person I got to interview when I first started podcasting.
Yeah.
Like the first prominent person I think it was maybe my first interview. And like I was so new, like I was still learning like all the tech and how to do it better. Right. And he was so great to sit down and talk with me about it. And then a year ago, I got to catch up with him around the anniversary time of Kingdom Come, and we talked again. Yeah. And I have a book on my shelf over here. It's the Superman fans, like 100 things that every Superman fan should do. And it has an intro by Mark Waid. And I just want to say that I think it should be 101 things, because I think adding your book as something that every Superman fan should read should be on there.
I do appreciate it. I really do. And that's the thing. I hope people recognize that this is not just, oh, Ed's writing another book, you know, because I've written a bunch of books. I put my heart and soul into this book. I really did, and I just want people to enjoy it. That's the thing. I hope people take away some joy following this history of this character who, and I've said this before, it's just blows my mind that Superman's introduced in 38 and 1940s on the radio, and he's been in some form of production in every decade since.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I sat down with my friend and we looked at it. And I said, when I was born in 85.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have Superman 4. And then you go into Superboy series.
Right.
Then you go into Lois and Clark. Then the animated series. Then Justice League animated series, which then overlaps with Smallville, into Superman Returns, into, Smallville finishes. You have 2 years, and then Man of Steel,
right.
Then BVS. Then you have, like we said, Justice League Action comes in. He appeared in The Batman, the animated series. I don't think I'm forgetting anything.
I don't think every decade.
And then Supergirl. So through my life, there's never been. I mapped it out one day. I honestly mapped it out. I was bored. I don't think there's maybe more than 1 year gap where there hasn't been something new in the media. Other, comics are constant, but in other media of Superman for me to enjoy.
And I started 20 years early. I was born in 60. In 65, I discovered the show. And basically, there's a Broadway musical. I didn't see it, but there's a Broadway musical. There was the cartoon, like I said, and it went on in the 70s. We had all those versions of Super Friends and the Superman, the movie, of course. And that late night David Wilson, Leslie Ann Warren thing, which not
Talked
good.
About that before.
It's great speaking to them about it. But it's just amazing to me that it's never stopped. And on Superman the movie, I was 18, and I remember sitting in the theater with 10 people, right? We watched it. We stood up to leave. We looked at each other. We sat back down and rewatched it a second time that night because we just couldn't believe what we had just witnessed. So anyway, that's really a tangent from what you started with. So,
no, it's the experience that we carry with us that we then, have the ability, like you said, you have the ability to pass on to your children. I have the ability to pass on. And that's one thing that excites me about Superman Legacy is my son will be 10, my daughter will be 8, and going to the theater to see Superman on the big screen.
Yeah.
My daughter stood up and yelled Superman in the movie theater at the scene in Black Adam where he comes walking in.
I love that scene.
She's so excited to see Supergirl in the Flash movie.
Yeah.
So the idea that in 2025 I get to go sit down and see another live action Superman on the big screen with my children now, and they'll be old enough to really appreciate it. It's thrilling. So.
Well, I'm thrilled to sit down with my children, even though they're in their late 20s and 30s. Can't wait to sit down with them and watch it too. So there you go.
I think it's a character that really brings families together. I did a panel back in September, and it was the panel was like Superman being an aspirational character and the inspiration that he brings. And my mother-in-law came to the con to support me and to see the panel. And afterwards she stopped me and she goes, I get it. I understand why you love this character so much and why it means so much to you. And she's always been a supporter. She paid for my graduation gift. I have the Superman symbol tattooed right here.
Oh, wow.
She paid for that as a graduation from college gift for me. She's got me. There's multiple things in this room that she's got. She's always supported, and because it's something I love, but she was like, I understand. I get what this character means.
That's very cool.
So that was a big epiphany moment. So
absolutely. No, it's wonderful.
But Ed, thank you for being here today, being part of this. I greatly appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. It was a great joy. I hope to come back again someday.
Anytime. I definitely we'll book ahead 2 years so we can talk Superman Legacy.
Okay, I'll be there.
All right. Yes.
Sounds good.
Is there any social media or anything that you'd like to, say that people could get in contact with you to just, share their stories or just interact with you at all?
I mean, I have everything. I have everything Superman Voices from Krypton related. I have a Voices from Krypton at gmail.com. If anyone wants to drop me a line there, I'm at Ed Gross on Twitter.
I think I follow you. I'm pretty sure I do.
There is a Voices from Krypton as well, but I don't remember the exact Twitter. I'm not a social. I only use social media really to say, "Hey guys, check out this cool article," or "I've got this book coming out," or something like that. And that's really kind of. I'm very limited on social media. I have to. That's something I really need to improve. So, at Ed Gross on Twitter is probably the best thing, and the Voices from Krypton at gmail.com. So,
is it the at Ed Gross, the entertainment journalist at TV Retrovision?
Yeah, all right. I'll go with that. Yeah. But that's not the whole Twitter thing, is it? It should be.
No, I found it right here.
There's a Voices from Krypton one as well on Twitter, but sadly, I don't remember exactly what it was.
Hey, we us super fans got to stick together.
Hey, what can you do? Hey, look, as long as I keep my marbles together to write the book and other books, then that's my concern. Everything else is just gravy that I can keep together. So there you go.
So I just want to say from me and Ed, just remember, I'm always around. We're going to press pause and hear a few words from our other podcasts on Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. Here's how Books with Brooks works. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Classics like Stephen King's The Shining, debut novels like We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang, and tons of other compelling, life-changing stories, one book and 1 month at a time. So come read along with us and then listen in.
If you are like Tyler and James and can't get enough super talk, check out these other podcasts. Digging for Kryptonite, Supergirl Radio, The Last Sons of Krypton, the Superboy Legacy Podcast, All-Star Superfans, Superman the Animated Podcast, The Aspiring Kryptonians, Always Hold On to Smallville, The Geek of Steel, and Truth, Justice, and Hope.
Remember to check out Krypton Report on all social media platforms. Go to linktree.com/Krypton Report. You find all of our report.
This is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.
Before we start this episode of Krypton Report, I want to take a moment and just give a shout out here to our Patreon. I know what you're thinking. Gosh, everyone's asking for money, and I get it. But our Patreon is only $1. $1 a month that helps us keep the podcast going. And what we do is we try to find interesting shows and topics and whatever we want to talk about. We've done, as of this little thing, our last recordings were on the Scream series. Brian and Tyler, that's me, do our own show where we record in the car, and it's kind of funny. And we talk about pop culture or whatever is going on. We also have the Supernatural podcast we've been reworking. It's taken some time just because of life. But we do movie commentaries as well. It's something that James and I have done, what we used to do on the main show that we've started doing here. So for $1 a month on our Patreon, you can get those shows. There's at least 4 a month. Also, there's my movie pitch show that I do. But also, what we want is if you're a Patreon, you can come on. You can come on the main show if you want. Or if there's something you want to come on and talk about, we can do it as a Patreon special. So all I want is for $1 a month, think about chipping in, joining our Patreon, and you have a voice to be a part of things. Follow the link in the link tree or in the show notes below, patreon.com/Krypton Report.
Look up in the sky.
We just want to say if you've enjoyed this podcast, please check out other podcasts on the Press Play Podcast Network. Information $1 a month, you'll get extra special content that you don't get on the main show, like movie commentaries and whatever else comes out of our mouths. So check it out, patreon.com/Krypton.